Hello everyone, my name is Paul and welcome back to the new news. I hope that everyone's having a fantastic night. I hope that everyone's had a wonderful Wednesday. Pat yourself on the back. Congratulations. You've made it halfway through the normal work week, especially if you're living in the United States. I understand there's some cultural differences too. But I hope that everyone is being safe. I hope that you, your family, and your friends are safe. And if not, I hope that you find that safety and security in the very near future. There's been a ton of stuff that's been going on throughout the world and inside of Ukraine, and there's just a ton of different developments, all of which are going to play a pretty big deal as we kind of move forward with the direction that the war in Ukraine is going, and kind of Middle Eastern affairs and stuff that's happening just kind of throughout the entirety of the globe. So hopefully that will end up kind of in the favor of mankind as opposed to being against it. But as we continue on here, I want to remind everyone that while we do deliver the news, and while that is kind of the whole point of this channel is to be an independent, unbiased, with the exception of Ukraine, unbiased and apolitical news source, independent news source, the main purpose of this is charity. We are never doing super chats on this channel. We are never going to be merchandising on this channel because 100% of everything that we do here at the New News is for charity and to help people throughout the world. If you check in the video description, you're going to see a ton of different organizational links. All of these are going to fundraisers, they're going to charities, they're going to organizations and things that we have vetted ourselves here at the New News for two main purposes. The first purpose, of course, is your safety and security as the viewer. Of course, I always advise discretion on your part. Don't believe everything on the internet, folks. But we have gone through to make sure that these are credible or organizations, individuals, and fundraisers to make sure that your safety is paramount there. And the second thing that we do is that we've gone through a lot of their tax records and we've vetted all of these charities and fundraisers to ensure that 80% or more of these donations that these organizations receive actually go to their programs, meaning they're directly going to helping people as opposed to going to salaries, administration's costs, and paying for additional fundraiser events. We want most of this money actually going to help people throughout the world, and that's the whole purpose of this. We want to be able to, at some point, hopefully be able to put a new stream on a fundraiser on every single stream, every single night that we're live. So that is the goal. That's the goal that we will continue to work towards until we get there, or we will die trying. That's the thing here. So please check out all of the organization links below. This is why we're doing this, and I want to make sure that everyone, is trying to support these organizations. If you can't give a lot, give a little. And if you can't give anything at all, that's okay. Trust me, I 100% understand. The thing is that 100% of, since 100% of everything that we do is for charity, we're not advertising or anything like that. So please make sure that you're trying to at least grow everything here. We want to grow this community. And we want to, grow this community, and and the only way to do that is through you guys. So please share with your friends, join us on social media. Everything's listed down there. Share it on your Discord, like, subscribe, all of the wonderful normal YouTube jazz. It really helps us out, and be active. I mean, I really look forward to people's questions and comments and stuff on here, and I really want to be able to answer them. So please, throughout the stream, throughout any of these streams, don't be afraid to ask questions at all. I'm sure there's a lot of other people that have the same questions you do, and I'd love to be able to answer them, at least within the best of my ability. Now, someone in the chat said, John Scott specifically said, good guy, respect, but no harm in making a bit of money for your trouble efforts. See, that's the thing. So I worked with another YouTuber that does do this. He doesn't have a job, which is fine, and he does need to make money. But I don't believe that it is correct to profit off of other people's problems and misery. People are suffering. People are dying. People are injured. And the thing is that I feel like profiteering off of that, and as well as the entire team, because this is a collective effort of a group of people. This isn't just myself. This is something that we have all agreed to. We're the news that gives back. We're not the ones suffering. We're not the ones in trouble. Most of us work full-time jobs. We can support this channel without it. And so we're not going to be profiteering off of this. We don't agree with it. Profiteering off of misery is not what we're here for. So that's the thing. So please make sure that you're, I thank you for the support, but support us in other ways, spreading the word about us and letting other people know, because that's the best way. Because the more people that are here, the more of an impact we will have overall. So I want to raise $1 million of charity through fundraiser streams, and the only way we can do that is to get to that point to begin with. So please, thank you for everyone's support. Thank you even more so for the support for the organizations. And with that, we're going to start getting into the news itself. And before I do, once again, please ask questions. So I understand a lot of these geopolitical situations is very complicated, to say the least. Syria, 40 different factions, at least in Syria, fighting each other. To give you a little bit of background about myself, I am, of course, my name is Paul. I was a corporal in the United States Marine Corps. I served for 4 years between 2016 and 2020. I deployed twice. My first deployment was to Syria. My second one was to Iraq, Kuwait, and Saudi Arabia. I was at the Baghdad Embassy Complex in 2020. So I have a little bit of expertise. Specifically, my job was as an O-352 anti-tank missileman. So I operated the Javelin anti-tank missile system as well as the Sabre or TOW missile system. And so I'm also fully cross-trained, of course, as a machine gunner. I have some basic knowledge regarding mortars and calling in mortars and rotary wing and fixed air wing casts. And I also have some, of course, general infantry skills because I was an infantryman. So my subject matter expertise is within anti-armor warfare. That is what I am certified in, an expert in, is anti-armor warfare and armor doctrine. So anything else, I will try to answer it to the best of my ability, but I please implore you to always do your own research. Once again, please don't trust everything you hear on the internet. But with that, we're going to go ahead and dive right into the news, and I hope to be able to answer some of those questions for you as we roll along. And of course, as we dive into the news, the top thing that we're looking at, the main story of the night, of course, is Ukraine. Ukraine has fought for 189 days continuously now. It's been 189 days since the 24th of February when the initial part of this war began. And we start our special report off here in Kyiv, where, of course, we get a child casualty update. This is coming from the Prosecutor General's Office of Ukraine. And what we see is that, quote, as of August 31st, due to the Russian military aggression in Ukraine, 735 Ukrainian children were injured, 379 were killed, 230 Ukrainian children are reported missing, and 7,297 have been forcefully deported to Russia. So quite an immense amount of suffering ongoing amongst children. Most of the children casualties, as we've heard time and time again from the Prosecutor General's office, most of these child casualties are from the Donetsk region, are from the Donetsk Oblast. These children here in these areas, unfortunately, the reality is that people within the Luhansk and Donetsk did not nearly evacuate as much as they should have. And that's an understandable reason. Their reasoning was pretty solid. They thought that they had been to war before. They thought they had been through warfare. They had fought, they had lived through the fighting between the separatists and the Ukrainians since 2014. How much more worse could it get? And a lot of families, they weren't willing to give everything up. They weren't willing to give up their family homes, their possessions, their belongings. They weren't willing to give up their livelihoods in the places that they had grown up and their grandparents had grown up, and generations of worth of, stuff there. And unfortunately, the reality is that as a result, a high number of civilian casualties here on the Eastern Front within the Donbass as a result of this. And those that have evacuated, a lot of them have learned that it was too little too late. And unfortunately, we've seen a lot of casualties as they are evacuating. Tokyo Spliff actually commented here and says, forcible deportation, relocation, and genocide of children constitutes as genocide. That is 100% correct. In fact, if I go over here, I'm going to pull this up for you. Legal definition of genocide. So I'm going to pull up the legal definition of genocide coming from the United Nations website for you guys. So this is the actual legal definition under the Rome Statute, which creates the International Criminal Court, and this is Article 6 specifically. It's based off of the 1948 Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crimes Against the Genocide, or the Genocide Convention. This is the 1948/1949 Geneva Conventions. And what we see is down here, this is the list, the definition of genocide. Article 2. In the present convention, genocide means any of the following acts committed with intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group as such. Part A, killing members of the group. Part B, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group. C, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part. D, imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group. And E, which is what Tokyo Spliff is talking about, forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. Once again, it can be based off of a national line, and once again, forcibly transferring children of a group to another group, such as the, what do we say here, 7,297 Ukrainian children forcefully deported to Russia from the occupiable regions, does technically constitute, or could constitute, a genocide. That alone. Now, will the International Criminal Court go on this alone? I am not an attorney inside an international law. Okay, so I'm not about to give you that legal advice there. But what I can tell you is that the thing is that they're going to try and nail as many. If you're going to say something like this, and say it's genocide and argue genocide in court, you're going to want more than just that. That clearly defined on the list. In fact, Russia even made publications about it in their legal code, which we actually have access to. So it's quite a bit of it's pretty deplorable of a situation. But will the ICC convict on this? Maybe, but unlikely, I would say. They will convict because of a multitude of other things. The intensity of war crimes, especially, or the number of war crimes, at least according to the Prosecutor General's Office of Ukraine, is up over 30,000 now by Russian forces. And there's a level in which something is just a tragedy. But when you're talking about genocide and crimes against humanity and things like this, you have to understand there's a level of scaling. And the fact of the matter is, Ukrainian forces have 100% committed war crimes against Russian forces. 100%. Without a doubt, in my mind, Ukrainian forces, advertise, not advertise, video evidence or not, doesn't matter. 100%, somewhere in this war, Ukrainian forces have violated the Geneva Convention and have committed war crimes against Russian troops. 100%. There has got to be a Russian prisoner of war that has been executed summarily. 100%. Guaranteed. Don't need video evidence to tell you that. But it's a war. And that is, a war crime is normally perpetrated by small individual groups. Whether it's an individual or a small group of individuals. And it's rather sporadic. 30,000 on the part of the Russians, that is way beyond sporadic. Every once in a while, we have some bad eggs in the forces. 30,000 war crimes is quite easily a crime against humanity. I mean, there's no other way to put it. It's a scale. You have bad stuff that happens in a war on both sides. That's understood. But even the United States, I mean, global war on terror happened for 20 years. I mean, we definitely have war. There are guys in Fort Leavenworth right now. They're there for shake and bakes, where they used white phosphorus against civilians and enemy forces. Violates the customary international humanitarian law. They went to Fort Leavenworth for breaking a war crime. U.S. did it. Taliban definitely did it. The Ukrainians are doing it, but the Russians have they've blown, if it was a scale of 1 to 10, the Russians are doing it at like a 15 or a 20. It's insane. As we jump over here to Kharkiv, Kharkiv has once again been struck with Iskander-M missiles, and while all of these missiles did not reach their intended targets, we do know that some of them did actually impact the city. Right now, we don't know the extent of the damage or any of the casualties. This is happening probably less, just over an hour before this stream began. So we have very limited evidence as to what's coming out right now, but just take a look. And so that is what is happening in Kharkiv right now. Iskander-M ballistic missile strikes on the city. Now, this is pretty much a daily occurrence. I want to make that pretty clear, that while it's not always, very outspoken about, the Russian Federation has been firing Iskander-M's as well as S-300 and S-400 batteries that were converted to hit surface targets at Kharkiv since the Kharkiv counteroffensive, essentially. The Kharkiv counteroffensive by Ukrainian forces very early on in the battle of the Donbass pushed Russian forces so far back that their conventional artillery cannot hit the city of Kharkiv itself. So the Russians relied on Iskander-M missile systems fired from Belgorod, Russia, which is just across the border here, which we have a couple points for the international news. But they fire them from Belgorod in the areas around Belgorod to Kharkiv, because it's the only things that will hit Kharkiv, and slam them into targets there. It's really, there's no point. There's no tactical or strategic importance in Kharkiv anymore. It's not viable, at least. There could be a command center or something located, but the fact of the matter is it's not tactically viable for the Russians. It just isn't. Their artillery isn't in range. They don't have the they don't have the troop concentrations and equipment concentrations in these areas to take the city of Kharkiv. If they were going to do that, it would have had to have been months ago, much earlier in the war, when they actually had a shot to do it and were on the outskirts and attempting to almost completely encircle Kharkiv. That's long gone. That opportunity may never, or is very unlikely to ever present itself. It's solely harassing fires here. In the words of Tokyo Spliff here in the chat, it's solely just harassing fires and really state-sponsored terrorism, because these are mostly hitting civilian targets. These are not accurate weapon systems, especially the S-300 and S-400s. They are originally meant for air. They're originally a SAM system, surface-to-air missile. Not a surface-to-surface missile. These are so those are especially highly inaccurate, even more than the Iskander-M's are. We know that the Iskander-M is not the most accurate ballistic missile ever produced. So most of these are hitting civilian targets, killing civilians, injuring civilians on quite a large scale, and it's a means and method that is not. It does not limit the amount of destruction, collateral damages, and collateral loss of life. These are Iskander-M missile systems being fired directly into a highly concentrated civilian population, and because the means and the methods don't exactly work to limit the destruction to the military targets themselves, that means that this actually also violates the Geneva Convention's Protocol Number 1, which was adopted in 1977, which states that the means and methods of warfare must limit the amount of collateral damage that is done, and that the planning must account for set of collateral damages, and that those damages need to be limited to within the best reasonable extent, the military targets defined, and if possible, to attack a military target that is much more viable outside of a highly concentrated civilian area. Please look up the first protocol, the Geneva Convention. It really says a lot about Russian tactics. As you jump down here into the Donetsk area, what we see here is the daily Donetsk update. This comes from Pavel Krylenko, who's the head of the Donetsk Regional Military Administration. And they say, quote, Russian aggressors fired missiles at the Donetsk region on August the 30th. 4 people were killed and 2 citizens were injured. So you go over here into the Luhansk Oblast. We actually have an update from Sergei Haida. Sergei Haida is the head of the Luhansk Regional Military Administration, even though the Russians and separatists basically control the entirety of Luhansk. We finally get an update from him, and he has said that, quote, since the beginning of Russia's full-scale war against Ukraine, Russian occupiers have destroyed more than 160 educational establishments in the Luhansk region. 19 of them cannot be restored, meaning they will have to be developed, they will have to be demolished, and they will have to be completely rebuilt from the ground up. There is no hope in fixing them. There's some interesting information that's been coming out of Mariupol, and something that we touched on a little bit yesterday is that they are teaching children how to use firearms. Essentially, they're teaching children how to fight a war. In Russia, there is a government, I don't know if it's government subsidized or just government run military organization, very Hitler Youthy. Just think, it's like an ROTC program on steroids. They teach children how to parachute. They teach children how to disable landmines. They teach children how to use weaponry, whether that be rockets, actually shooting rockets, actually shooting RPGs, firing the AK, conducting small unit tactics. ROTC, like JROTC, but insane. Basically giving them boot camp the entire time they're in school, and then getting them ramped up to go into the military, and then get to go to actual big boy boot camp. And that's exactly what they're doing. And that's what we see here. They can't even feed the people of Mariupol, but they're teaching their children how to fight like this and how to operate military equipment. Take a look.
Разрабатывают навыки сборки и разборки автомата Калашникова. Эти навыки пригодятся, если юноармейцы захотят связать свою дальнейшую жизнь с военным делом.
Армейцы учатся при помощи кошки снимать растяжки. Для нас снятия развивают ловкость, сноровку и точность. А здесь у нас проходят соревнования по тактическому лазертагу. Задача обеих команд – не оставить шансов на победу сопернику.
На данном занятии отрабатываются навыки первой доврачебной помощи в чрезвычайных ситуациях. Юноармейцы изучают основы подвесной системы, военную и полевую укладку парашюта.
This is insanity. This is insanity. Why? Why would you? Why? Listen, JOTC is one thing, right? Everyone's got a generation of children that's going to be interested in military stuff, and take them on a field trip to the motor pool, teach them how to drill with rifles, cool, whatever, right? We have that in the United States. There's nothing wrong with that. I thought JROTC would be cool as hell when I was in school. We didn't have one until I was a junior in high school, and I was already getting ready to go into the Marine Corps. So, there wasn't really any point. But it's just this takes it so much further than just an interest, right? It takes it just so much further than that. It's I don't understand. Multiple sources are reporting that at the drama theater, they are currently filling in that drama theater. For those that don't know, the drama theater during the Battle of Mariupol was struck with 2 500-kilogram bombs, and it was clearly labeled as a bomb shelter. There's been a lot of talk about, from the Russians especially, that, they sealed the Ukrainians in there and then burned them alive and all sorts of other stuff. We do know what actually happened to the Mariupol Drama Theater. 2 500-kilogram bombs impacted the roof. That was clear after, on both sides in Russian, it was clearly labeled children, marking it as a bomb shelter. It was pretty much the pretty much everyone inside was killed, from our understanding. And they didn't really clean up, or they didn't allow the locals who they're forcing to clean everything else up. They brought in a team from Moscow specifically for this location. And they were clearing it out. They have decided to pour in concrete instead of trying to take the dead out and cleaning it up. They're pouring it in with concrete. Unbelievable. And so that is the latest from the Mariupol Drama Theater. There has been a little bit of chatter today. I will say that there's been a little bit of chatter today regarding whether or not the death toll of Mariupol has increased by about 11 times over. I've seen that pretty often throughout, and I trying to go and do research. I haven't seen anything saying that outside of just social media. There hasn't been anything posted. There hasn't been any evidence of this. There hasn't been anything reportedly. A journalist in Mariupol said that according to morgue records, 113,000 people have been killed in the city of Mariupol, which is about 11 times more than the estimates originally. But to let you know, I don't know if it's true or not. It's something to be aware of, but there isn't any evidence to back it. This is just something that I've been seeing on social media. So something worth addressing in case that evidence comes forthcoming in the next in the next day or two, but not something that we can confirm or deny. It definitely wouldn't surprise me. The city of Mariupol is completely destroyed. 90% of the city is so destroyed that it will have to be completely rebuilt. If it hasn't collapsed already on its own, it will have to be demolished and it will have to be completely rebuilt. 90% of the city of Mariupol is like this. There's no running water. There is no electricity. There isn't any sanitation. There isn't any gas. So these people are going to freeze to death in the winter. There is no medical supplies. There's a rampant amount of cholera because of the lack of sanitation and clean water. People are starving to death. There are food riots. There is a ton of very terrible things. Filtration is a big thing. You have to have filtration paperwork to move around the city of Mariupol. Mariupol can be, Fair puts it probably the best. We can't speculate those numbers, and we can't speculate the number of casualties in the Battle of Mariupol until an official investigations have been completed. But to have survived the Battle of Mariupol is a worse fate than death. It is hell on earth. It is absolute hell on earth. There is no worse place I'd say, in this entirety of the war than Mariupol. It has suffered for so long, and it has taken it's such a tragic loss. As we continue here on the front, glory to Russia. Interesting that I would say this. Russian volunteers that are fighting for Ukraine have been screaming glory to Russia as they go and engage the Russian army. Take a look.
Слава России! Гадыревским собакам след, блядь!
Yes. So, Ervis Chiang asks, are they shooting at Russians? Yeah. So these are members of the Free Russian Legion, actually. So you may notice a marking. First of all, there's an L. It's an L, and it's blue and white alone. And you may notice a Russian flag going around, or a flag going around it's a white flag with a blue stripe in the middle. And that's it. And that is it's the Free Russian Legion insignia. Those are the Free Russians. These are anti-Putin Russian troops. A lot of them were either prisoners of war or they deserted the Russian forces, and they actually are now fighting with Ukraine. Many people outside of Russia, when the war began, are actually within this, and a lot of them, I believe that's the first time we actually saw here on the channel, was actually protests in other national capitals of Russians against Putin with this flag. And it's something that these Russians have adopted, and the Ukrainians, it took them a while, it took them several months to really go, after hearing enough of these, they were like, okay, we should form a legion with these guys if they want to fight the Russians. I mean, let them fight the Russians. What are we to say otherwise? And they have, and they've done some pretty good stuff. These guys, they're from Russia. Their families are in Russia, and Russia's an authoritarian state now. It's not a democracy, no matter how much of a front it may put. They put so much forward. They are truly sacrificing quite a bit, and these guys, they can never return home. No matter how the outcome of the war is, they can, unless Putin is overthrown and this kind of a group, this kind of an organization or democratic force takes over Russia, these guys will never truly be able to go home. They'll never be able to go back to Russia. Depending on how the situation with the war goes and how the situation in Russia also develops too. But these guys, they're fighting with the Ukrainians. They are Russians. They're the Free Russian Legion. If they want to say glory to Russia because they are fighting for their free Russia, then I'm not gonna hate on these guys. These are the good Russians. And also some pretty good combat footage we're starting to see coming out. We can move over here. This is in the Zaporizhzhia Oblast in the occupied regions of it, and this is coming out of Tokmak. Tokmak has a little bit of an airstrip on the outside of it, which is right here. There's some other facilities in and around that could be used quite heavily by military activity, and we've seen military activity within this area before. And what we see now is that explosions are currently lighting up the night sky around the Russian-held city of Tokmak. There's an immense amount of smoke suggesting some rather successful strikes on Russian military targets in and around this area. We do know that there are Russian troop concentrations in Tokmak. Not specific units at this point, though that information is a little bit hard to come by. But just take a look.
Як красиво. О, наші шмалять. Красавчики. О.
And so those are Ukrainian strikes on Tokmak, which is behind the occupied lines within the Zaporizhzhia Oblast. We jump up here into Zaporizhzhia itself, where we have a couple of different updates. Right now, what we're taking a look at is that there's a crackdown on corruption, actually. So we're getting this from the Ukrainian SBU, which is essentially their FBI. And they have reported that they have uncovered a large corruption scheme within the state emergency services within the Zaporizhzhia Oblast and other oblasts as well. And basically what this is they were demanding bribes. They were taking money, and they were expediting permit processes for buildings. And they weren't conducting fire safety checks or anything else. So that were required for these permits. They basically were they take the bribe, expedite the permit, and then they would take another bribe and just say they had checked it and made sure it was safe in case of a fire, and they had not. And this is, once again, this is coming from the official Twitter of the SBU. So, a couple pictures that they've released with this. Once again, the State Emergency Service of Ukraine, there was a scheme for basically taking bribes and not doing the proper safety checks. I will say this, as I'm seeing something in the chat here, where everyone from in chat, I'm UK. That's coming from John Scott. Please keep yourself safe on the internet, folks. Do not release personal information for yourself. You have to understand there's a lot of people that would really like to know as much about you as they could, for not very good reasons. So please practice internet safety. And as we continue on here with the Zaporizhzhia Oblast and the news, what we see here is that the International Atomic Energy Administration has arrived for their mission to the power plant. They're here in the Zaporizhzhia region. Right now, I've heard rumors that they are at a checkpoint. The team is led by Grossi, who is in charge of the International Atomic Energy Administrations. And he said that plans to establish a permanent mission at the nuclear power plant. It is still unclear whether Russian forces will let them in Hadar, but today they were refused entry. According to the BBC in Russia, Russian occupiers refused to issue passes to the Zaporizhzhia plant to the International Atomic Energy Administration delegation. The delegation is standing in line at a checkpoint, the Ukrainian-controlled territory. Russian occupiers argue that they could reach the plant from Russia without any obstacles. Take a look. So once again, that is the United Nations vehicles carrying the International Atomic Energy Administration delegation to the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant in Zaporizhzhia here in Ukraine. Speaking of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, we jump down here over to Enhadar. Enhadar is the city that supports the nuclear power plant. And it would appear that the city administration was shelled last night. At this point, the Russians are claiming that Ukrainian forces for the explosions. So once again, that is the strikes on the administration building here in Enhadar. Now, we can't confirm or deny at this point that the Ukrainians are shelling the plant, but the evidence seems to say that it is the Russians, based off of several different things, the speed of sound being one of them, believe it or not. But Enhadar is kind of a contentious situation, so until the International Atomic Energy Administration does conclude their investigation there, we hope that we're going to try and stay off that topic for now regarding who is firing at who until an investigation has been forthcoming concerning this one on the way. But finally, as some of you maybe, before we get there, Crimea. So what we see here, this is, I'm going to try and pronounce this, Krasnodarv Krasnogvardeyskoye. I'm sorry, terrible pronunciation. But there's a large fire here in Crimea. A large fire appeared in Crimea. It's not known if this is actually a strike or not, or if it was just an accident. There's just too little information at this point, but take a look. We have several different images coming from this. And that appears to be the source of this fire. We're not quite sure what that is to be able to actually tell you any information there. There's just not enough clear information here within the... JL has an amazing comment here regarding this situation, and he says that the Russians should quit smoking. Now, I do, for those the few that may have noticed at some point, I do have that slightly healthy habit, or unhealthy habit. The issue is that I'm not dumb enough to smoke around ammunition depots or anything else. Aviation fuel, ammunition depots, saltpeter. No, those are pretty terrible times to smoke, I would think. But, you know, I noticed one thing. Common sense really just ain't that common no more. But that actually allows us to come back up here, and this is into the Kherson Oblast. This is the news that everyone is interested in. This is what you guys are kind of looking for. I know right now this is the hot topic. Now, there needs to be something said, and that is that the amount of information has slowed significantly, rightfully so. Very early on into the Kherson offensive, everyone wanted to know what was going on. The fact of the matter is that in order to do that, you need to understand that that discloses operational security information. Loose lips sink ships, and that rings true very much so in this modern day. The war in Ukraine is an absolute intelligence gold mine. The reason being, everyone has a smartphone with a camera. Everybody can report on what's going on, show troop movements, show where Ukrainian forces are at, geolocate things. The internet is an amazing thing. Open source intelligence is better than ever before. TikTok alone has probably caused so many Ukrainian strikes on Russian ammunition depots and Russian forces that they should probably just quit using the app. But they don't. Same thing with their own stuff. VK, for instance. Telegram has caused a lot of strikes. Social media and the open source intelligence community has caused an immense amount of strikes. So when you're looking at this offensive, be mindful of what you are saying, because people's lives depend on it. Believe it or not. Even here on this channel, because I don't know who all of these viewers are. I don't know who you all are. I like to think I at least try to, talk to you guys on the Discord and stuff, but in reality, I don't know exactly who's behind each and every screen, So be mindful of what you're saying and what you're posting. And please, if you are in Ukraine, especially in these areas, or you have family in these areas that are sending you stuff, be very mindful of what you post on the internet. It could mean Ukrainian troops' lives. It could mean whether or not an offensive gets to take place, a strike gets to occur. So please bear that all in mind. Operational security is paramount, folks. And as we move here, this is in Tversk. Tversk has been apparently had another ammunition depot which has been struck. At this point, we can see a large fire and sympathetic detonations ongoing. This is the second ammunition depot in Tversk, which has been destroyed thus far during the course of the offensive.
Нихуя у своей экране.
So as you can clearly hear, munitions going off. That is an ammunition depot. That's a pretty good indicator that's an ammunition depot that was struck here. You're getting that sympathetic detonation. Also, Russian forces are completely cut off. Quote, the armed forces of Ukraine destroyed a Russian Tor M2E anti-aircraft missile system, an enemy reconnaissance strike UAV forepost, and two ammunition depots in the south of Ukraine on August 31st. Moreover, the Ukrainian army established fire control over the Kovalsky and Antonovsky road bridges. That is coming from the Operational Command South. They established fire control, meaning that these bridges are sighted in and that at a moment's notice, they can strike them as necessary, as much as necessary. There is no way across the river. The Russian forces on the north side of the Dnieper River are trapped between the river and Ukrainian forces, and they are sandwiched, starting to run low on supplies, men, and equipment, with no way of getting any reinforcements or more supplies in. At least not in enough of a meaningful way to actually make a difference. So, what does this mean? You're quite literally trapped between a rock and a hard place. You either surrender, you're destroyed, or you drown yourself. That is what the situation here is in Ukraine. That is what the situation here in the Kherson is for the Russian Federation and any of their forces north of the Dnieper River. Their situation is going to grow quite hopeless. For them, this is their version of Mariupol. They're surrounded and they have no chance of escape, no chance of meaningful resupply, and their only hope is to either surrender or fight to the last man. We know that there were more successful strikes here within the Kherson region. Quote, the armed forces of Ukraine destroyed a Russian 152mm Hull self-propelled gun, Hyacinth S, a 152mm self-propelled howitzer, two A-65 Mista B, and four enemy ammunition depots in Bastiansky, Borislav, Kakovka, and the Kherson regions on the south of Ukraine on August the 30th. Once again, the Operational Command South. Oh, wonderful. I see Jake from State Farm is here. Maybe you can provide these guys with some insurance, because I think they're about to need some. Anyway, what we see here, a war goes two ways. We have to understand that casualties are occurring on both sides. At this point, we are starting to see some Ukrainian casualties, including NATO equipment. In fact, today, an M1083A1P2 transport vehicle, which is a logistical truck, the U.S. Army uses them quite extensively, but they basically, those have been destroyed, as well as their stockpiles, probably their crews as well. And as well as the M777 155mm artillery guns that they were transporting. They have been destroyed. Reportedly, this has occurred inside of the Kherson Oblast. It's a very short video, but you can tell. So you can see here. This truck is completely destroyed. You can see what's left of the shells. You can see some of them are still in their transport configuration. They don't have the crush heads on the tips. You can see that the armored door swung completely open from the blast, and it's completely just charred. Same thing, the vehicle out in front. That's actually the back end of a M777. That's actually these fold down and actually dig into the ground. But it's they've been destroyed. So the Ukrainian forces are taking losses. We can confirm that with that alone. We do know that these are Ukrainian forces that are taking losses, just based off of their equipment and what's been provided to them. It's HIMARS o'clock right now. HIMARS responded engaging targets once again tonight here within the Kherson Oblast, likely striking key supply routes, headquarters, and ammunition depots of the Russian Federation. Once again, Russian troops are currently trapped between the Dnieper River and the counteroffensive itself with no real way to go. So please enjoy HIMARS O'Clock.
Виктория, наверное. Виктория, наверное.
Whatever they're shooting at right now is about to be very unbelievably dead. These things are accurate up to within 1 meter, meaning it will hit between me and the camera that I'm talking to you through. That is how accurate these are. And he just fired a lot of missiles. So, whatever he's intending to hit, it's going to be an extremely dead thing. Whatever it is, it's going to be dead. Unbelievably dead. I would say that's almost overkill, actually. But I'm pretty confident that the Ukrainians know what they're doing. Now, a little bit of different thing came out today. This is a couple days old at this point, but it's worth taking a look at because it really shows you the scale of what's going on and how Ukrainian tactics have differentiated over the course of the war. Beginning early on, the tactics used by the Ukrainians and the Russians were essentially the same. Except that the Russians were using their offensive doctrines and the Ukrainians were using the post-Soviet defensive doctrine. Throughout the course of the war, that has changed. Once, of course, they're going on the offensive here in some areas, but you can see that they're using light infantry brigades. They're using armored vehicles. They're doing support by fires. They are fighting in a much more meaningful way, to say. They're fighting in a way that it's much more better. It's a better utilization of what we consider combined arms warfare. And this is the stuff that has made NATO countries very effective. So you definitely can see that reflected here, just based off of what we're seeing. And their equipment, too. Their equipment that they're bringing up is pretty fantastic as well. Just take a look. So this is the very beginning. This would have been located here up over by WD Breed, which is where we know the Ukrainians, as has already been pretty highly recorded. This is about where the Ukrainians broke through along the Inhalets River. This is when they were, I'm going to say this is likely when they were assaulting the 109th Donetsk People's Republic's Mechanized Rifle Regiment, which completely broke and ran. You go ahead and take a look.
А ну-ка, что там с тем левым ухом? Ну давай, малыш. Музыка. Жар. Есть контакт.
So you can see, they're in rifle platoons, they're stacked, and they're ready to go. These guys are prepared, and what's happening is these tanks, this is a T-72, it's rolling up there, it's opening up with its machine guns. That's going to basically kind of suppress their target. They're going to find their main gun target, and they're going to engage it, which is what happens here. And you're also seeing that they're being supported with light armored vehicles, M113s and other types of armored vehicles. So it's great to see. Now, someone pointed out in the comments, Delta Aviation is saying that M777 is from 3 days ago. That's a possibility. With any information, there's usually a delay in a war. It's usually anywhere from 12 to about 72 hours. It really depends. But a lot of information is not perfectly real time. So please be understanding in that. In a very fluid combat environment like this one, in a very kinetic and fluid situation, information is very fragmented and is very difficult to sort through. So we're seeing it today, and I will report it as we are seeing it today. but that is a possibility that I won't deny. That could actually have been from 3 days ago, as Delta Aviation is stating. Now JL has asked a question and said all of those were going to strike one area, or despite being fired at the same time, they can strike different positions. I don't know. I never actually operated HIMARS. So I was co-located with a HIMARS battery when I was in Syria. I have some really cool videos of that. But the thing is that I never used HIMARS. I've never been inside of HIMARS. And that's probably for good reason. But the thing is that I don't know. I believe, and please do your own research with this, I believe the HIMARS can fire at multiple targets separately with independent rockets. However, it would appear that may have been striking one target, but a large target, such as it may be cratering the airfield next to Chernobivka, the Kherson International Airport. It could be hitting an ammunition depot or a large stockpile. It could be hitting a bridge. It could be hitting, any number of targets, and they're getting a spread on it, or we would call it a sheaf. But it could be any of that. So I don't know. We don't know what these targets are. We'll probably be finding out tomorrow. But my understanding is they can fire independent targets, but that salvo seems to all be at one. But that is it within the Kherson Oblast. But over here in Odessa, we see that another ship has left the port of Odessa. Quote, on August 31st, one more ship with Ukrainian agricultural products left the port of Odessa through the grain corridor. That's coming from the official Twitter account of the Turkish Ministry of National Defense. But that is actually everything inside of Russia, inside of Ukraine, rather. But don't worry, there's other stuff ongoing outside of Ukraine too, and many of them have to deal with the ongoing war. So please be sure to hang around as we start getting into the international news. Right now, we don't have anything more coming out of Belarus, but what we do have is stuff that's coming out of Russia. Now, as I had said before, with the missile strikes in Kharkiv, not all of these missiles made it to their intended target, which was Kharkiv. There's a reason for that. So we're seeing here, Iskander. This is an Iskander-M missile system that has failed. In fact, it's Iskander-M ballistic missile, which was intended for Kharkiv. They were firing it, and it failed, and it ended up reportedly striking residential homes and buildings. The casualties at this point, we don't know. But just take a look.
Ебануться нахуй.
So, when your missile is supposed to go up, but it goes sideways, it usually indicates a failure of your weapon system. And once again, the Russians, being the Russians, are putting their military equipment in and around highly concentrated civilian populations. Those two things don't mix. Can you imagine if there's a catastrophic failure inside the tube? That thing's going to detonate, and it's going to blow up the whole area, and probably any ready ammunition nearby, and that's definitely going to kill civilians. Now, there is explosions being spotted across Belgorod right now, or at least earlier today, and it would appear possible strikes by Ukrainian forces, or these could have been failures by more Iskander-M missile systems, but we just don't know at this point. There's not enough evidence, but you can see clearly something has struck over here by Belgorod. And you can clearly see that this is from Belgorod. This is a missile that's just shoved into a child's playground. Fantastic. As we jump up here, we go into Moscow, where we have a development. So a second suspect has been announced in the Dugina assassination investigation. The FSB names the second suspect regarding Dugina's car bombing. And yes, these are images. These are exactly the images that the FSB decided to give to RIA News. RIA Novosti, which is a Russian state-run media organization. This is coming from the FSB. This is official release photos. Believe it or not. These are the photos from RIA. These are the photos the FSB is going with. Oh my God. How? I could not take a look at that and be serious about it. There's no way. I can't look at that and go and be serious. Like, I can't go, wow, this is like a sketch would have been better, guys. Like, this is just memes. Like, these are just memes. 100%. These are just memes. We jump over here up into Sweden, where we're seeing that Sweden has presented the 7th military aid package. The 7th Swedish military aid package for Ukraine will consist of ammunition for artillery with a total value of 500 million Swedish crowns, or about 50 million euros. Then you can see that, and this is coming from And Lind, who's the Minister of Foreign Affairs for Sweden. As we continue on into the rest of Europe, we jump over here over to Czechia, where President Milos Zeman has signed the ratification documents for Finland and Sweden. The Czech Republic's president, or Czechia, President Milos Zeman signed the ratification documents for the protocols and the accession of the Republic of Finland and the Kingdom of Sweden into the North Atlantic Treaty Organization at Prague Castle today. You see there he is signing those into law there. So Czechia, once again, they have ratified. That is yet another country closer to Finland and Sweden being part of the NATO alliance, making the alliance 32 members strong as opposed to just 30. Jump over here into Spain, where a 10-minute long storm in Catalonia, in the Catalonian autonomous region within Spain, saw a giant hailstone smash windows, destroy roofs, down power lines. A 2-year-old child has been killed and 50 other people reported injuries. This is the first hail death in Europe since 1997. So in 25 years, they have not been able to, they haven't had any deaths due to hail here in Europe. So I'm from the Midwest, right? And here in the United States, like I'm from the Midwest, and I've been through some pretty decent hailstorms. I've still never seen a hailstorm this bad, ever. Let alone in Spain. Spain's in the Mediterranean. It's got the Strait of Gibraltar, for crying out loud. Like, this is not Spanish. This is not Spanish weather. I mean, look at the size of this hail. I mean, this is This is like softball-sized hail right here. Well, baseball-sized hail, I'd say. Xenocide says you just docked yourself, Paul. Okay, narrow. Okay, the Midwest includes Minnesota of all places. Come on. Come on. I don't even consider Minnesota the Midwest. And if you're from Minnesota, you can fight me. I will stand by my statements to the death. Let's see. Delta Aviation says that after the war, will Ukraine switch to NATO tanks? That's a really good question. It's a possibility. Ukraine jail says hopefully nobody died or was seriously injured from that. Unfortunately, a 2-year-old child did in fact die from that, and 50 people were injured by the hail. Delta Aviation, going back to your question regarding whether or not Ukraine will switch to NATO tanks, that depends on a lot of things. It depends on a willingness to sell them. A very big willingness to sell them. Ukraine, or by a NATO country. It's also a possibility of Ukraine could go to a non-NATO member, but that has NATO alliances, such as, say, South Korea, and they could buy some of their tanks. They have a new tank that's in production that is pretty substantially similar to a NATO tank, and it wouldn't technically violate any NATO treaties or anything. So that's something that could be a possibility. Or Ukraine could just end up going and becoming a member of NATO after this is over. I mean, they have the other equipment. They have the rest of the stuff. Like, they have M777s, 155 batteries, M4s, they're running 556. They're getting NATO training right now. They could be getting NATO fighter jets at some point in the future. Like, just go all the way. I mean, if you're already going to go there, you might as well just finish the job. So, I mean, it's a possibility. It definitely is. And I wouldn't even rule it out that it might have to wait to the end of the war. We could even see at some point, we're seeing Gepards, an anti-aircraft platform. We're seeing SPG, self-propelled guns, that are NATO vehicles. I mean, the Gepard, which is an AAP, the PHZ 2000, is also a NATO. The M109 Paladin, that's a NATO self-propelled gun as well. The Caesar artillery, that's NATO. I mean, all of this heavy equipment, it's NATO. It's NATO stuff. Sending a tank is not going an extra mile. I think the issue is that main battle tanks comprise of quite a large force, and they're very expensive. And things like the Abrams tank have, my understanding is that the Abrams tank has top secret stuff inside of it that you do not want to fall into the hands of your possible adversaries. And that issue is that whenever you're supplying Ukraine, a lot of that stuff that is that top secret is the fact that it is a necessity for those vehicles to operate properly, and therefore they can't remove that equipment, but you also can't allow that equipment to fall into the hands of the Russians. The Javelin's been around for a while. It's been around for a while. The Javelin has been. And if it falls in the hands of the Russians and the Chinese already kind of know how it works. They've already figured it out. Chinese have built their own version of the Javelin already. They just actually, this year, have released that their own version. And so they're kind of figuring it out anyway. So that's a risk that you can take. The Switchblade is a very minor, very simple idea. Anyone could honestly probably come up with it. And so you just had to play Call of Duty. I mean, that's really where the idea probably came from, is they were playing Call of Duty Black Ops 2, and they have the hunter-killer drone, and someone was like, I could make a lot of money off of that and sell it to the military. And they did. Because it wasn't very long after the Switchblade came into progress and was fielded. So it's a possibility, but I don't think anyone's willing to risk the Leopard 2. They're not willing to risk the Abrams. They're not willing to risk the Leclerc or the Challenger 2. I think if you're going to see a NATO vehicle, your best hope is for Leopard 1s, but most of those are going over to, say, like Poland and Lithuania and stuff, because they are already NATO countries that have quite large stockpiles of, they mostly run on old Soviet tanks with their own independent upgrades and NATO upgrades to be NATO compatible. So they are probably the first in line to get those tanks, because they already are guaranteed to be backing them in a war if should a war break out between NATO and Russia. As you move down here, this is in Montenegro. The FBI has sent cyber teams to Montenegro. The cyber action teams, or CAT, in order to help with recent investigations of cyber attacks within the country. Currently, Montenegro government has lost all of their IT systems. The government has also confirmed that they believe the attacks were conducted by a criminal gang named Cuba Ransomware Group. If you want some more in-depth information onto that, you can go check out the article by Reuters. Once again, you can go to our website, the link's in the description, and you can go to our daily works, and you can go back and look at our entire archive of news stream maps, and you can actually take a look and click on all these points and videos and stuff yourself if you're so interested. And that starts to bring us down here as we move southward into the Middle East. And we have had quite a few different things happen inside the country of Syria. The first one, we start up here. This is in the Al-Hasaka province of Syria, where this is at the Al-Hol camp, where for the 7th day of the raid organized by the PKK and the SDF at the Al-Hol camp. They're looking for ISIS supporters. At the moment, there are more than 90 people are currently under arrest and are reportedly in the camp, including women and children, according to this source. Dozens of refugee tents were also demolished due to accusations of them holding Sharia courts in them. More than 50,000 people at the Al-Hol camp, more than 27,000 of which are children and teenagers. Most residents are refugees from Iraq, and there are also captured families of the Islamic State militants there. You can see some of these images coming out of the Al-Hol camp in Iraq. Once again, Delta Aviation has another question, and it's kind of a follow-up to the tank question. And it says that, don't HIMARS have secret equipment? Risk versus reward, or your OODA loop, your risk identifier. And what you got to do is you have to think, what are the risks, what are the rewards, and, how do they weigh out? This is one of the reasons that I do not believe that the United States Special Forces, even though many people were like, there's got to be Special Forces operators, inside of Ukraine, from the United States doing some clandestine stuff. I never thought so. I don't think there was, because it wouldn't have a big enough impact. And so I don't personally believe that was ever the case. And if it was a very small team for advise and assist at the highest level, meaning they were going in and they were advising generals and stuff in the Ukrainian military of what they need to do. And the thing is that I don't believe that they were there because the risk was too great. If Russia did find out that there were special forces operators from the United States or NATO countries inside of Ukraine, that would open the door to a war against Ukraine. Whereas keeping, drones and intelligence aircraft inside of NATO borders, but able to provide Ukraine with intelligence, that doesn't directly involve you with the conflict. It doesn't escalate things with Russia any worse than what they already are, and it also gives Ukraine a lot more information that they otherwise wouldn't have available to them, and it allows them to make much better informed tactical and strategic decisions. HIMARS are kind of the same deal. HIMARS most certainly probably have top secret stuff in them. I wasn't allowed inside of a HIMARS, and I've had a Javelin. Like, I knew how to operate missiles. Right? But the thing is that the HIMARS systems are they can fire far enough that they outrange anything that Russia really can use against it. And they can, and if they are destroyed, that equipment is destroyed with them. The equipment inside the missiles is destroyed upon impacts. And generally speaking, the U.S. and NATO stockpiles are a lot better kept, I would say, than probably Russian stockpiles are, as we've seen throughout this war, a lot of failures in their weapon systems. Whereas a main battle tank, you're not shooting that from kilometers away. Not nearly as far as artillery or HIMARS anyway. The average max effective range for a tank main gun is about 4,000 kilometers. Or 4,000 meters, sorry. About 4 kilometers in total. That's maximum effective range on a main tank gun round. Effective range. On average. Because most average main tank guns run about 120 millimeters or so. You know, give or take a little bit. It's kind of dependent. Some are up to 125. Some are a little bit lower. But that's about your maximum effective range. 4 kilometers. You know what else shoots 4 kilometers? Some variants of the TOW missile. And as a result, thanks to the United States and the Soviet Union, and then following Russia competing in arms races, so does the Kornet rocket. So does the Stugna P. So does you name a purpose-built anti-tank guided missile, and it probably shoots 3 to 4 kilometers. About, I'd say 2 to 4 kilometers. Because that puts you at the max standoff range where you can effectively engage something as a target. So you're putting tanks at a lot more risk as opposed to the HIMARS. Delta Aviation says ISIS has M1A1 captured from the Iraqi army in 2015. So what's the problem if Ukraine gets some of the secrets are already known by our enemies? That's not true. Well, it's half true. The Islamic State captured a ton of American equipment when they took over a bunch of Iraq. And they captured a lot of Abrams tanks. And they captured a lot of Humvees and a lot of MRAPs, and basically the Iraqi army kind of folded. Now, the thing is that the United States had a long bombing campaign. I could not sleep for crap when I got there in 2017. I went on my first deployment in October 2017. And that's when the air campaign was really kicking. Every 30 minutes... there were fighter aircraft landing at the base in Kuwait, and they were either landing or taking off every 30 minutes on the 30 minutes. And when they were taking off, they were fully laden. I've never seen so many bombs in my life. I could not believe that there was a country, your first demonstration truly of what modern warfare can possibly be like, the immense amount of firepower that can be brought to bear. And then these jets were coming back completely empty. They're flying 8-hour missions on average. These guys were sitting in their cockpits 8 hours, flying continuously every single day, day in, day out. It was really impressive. It also made it very hard to sleep because our tents, our hooches were at the end of the tarmac. So it made it hard to sleep when these things were taking off and doing combat takeoffs. But we bombed every single Abrams tank. It was one of the leading targets that the United States said, we have to destroy these. We have to destroy these. These cannot fall in the hands of anyone else. Yep. And Demise FBS also follows that up, and he says the M1 Abrams tanks for Iraq was export versions specifically made for the Iraqi army. They didn't have any sensitive materials. That's 100% correct as well. I know Egypt actually. You know what? Hold on. I have something for this. So, for those that don't know, this right here is my original. This is my original instructor's booklet. So when I went through anti-tank school, I had to. This is my knowledge from that. Okay, it's in a binder. It's really cool. Woohoo. Okay, And yeah, so that entire bottom shelf right there is nothing but manuals. It's nothing but technical manuals, and it's nothing but knowledge stuff. If I have ever written it down regarding the stuff I did in the Marine Corps, if I ever could get my hands on a manual, I have a Saber system manual in there. I have a Javelin manual in there that I pulled out of brand new boxes for stuff. I have infantry tactics. I have armored warfare. I have working with special operations forces. If you want it, why is it sticky, Paul? It's not sticky. It's beat up. It's been through 2 deployments and 4 years in the Marine Corps and a lot of trips to the field. It's well used. This is the Bible of the anti-tank missileman right here. But if I go here and I go to anti-armor, or if I go to my armor block, my armor identification, I can actually go to, and by the way, this stuff is, because I have the classification here for it. Okay. So this stuff is very intentionally left blank. I'm making sure, by the way, that this is something that I can tell you. I don't know. Let's see. Cam. Because I have to make sure that anytime I tell you stuff, especially from a manual, I have to make sure it's not for official use only, or that it's classified. Or, well, I wouldn't have classified materials here. I'd only have for official use only. But, let's see here. Yeah, they don't let you keep classified documents. Crazy enough. I would have known that. But anyway, so here we go. Okay, so I'm not seeing a classification here, so it must be public knowledge. Okay, cool, sweet. So what we got here is the M1A1A2 Abrams. Cool. All right, sweet. And what it says is that the M1A1A2 Abrams is an American heavy tank used by Australia, Egypt, Iraq, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, and the United States. It's United States built, and it has, it starts listing off specifications for things that you guys may find interesting, but probably don't care about. So at the end of the day, there are 6 different countries that use the Abrams tank. Okay. Not all of these were built for the United States and we just gave them over. The United States, thanks, Riley. Thanks for making sure the audience knew just how much I wanted my manuals. Yeah, I looked through quite literally every single box that we brought into the house to find all of my manuals again, just for this stream. But anyway, the thing is that when you go and you build a tank, you have one for yourself and then you have one that you can export, you can sell. That has to go through a lot of hoops, which is why things like the F-16 sale to Turkey is so specific, and why there's so many hurdles they have to jump through. That's one of the reasons why why Imran Khan was kind of upset with the United States, is because the United States wouldn't sell things to Pakistan. They wouldn't sell parts. They denied them to be sold certain engines for their helicopters because they weren't willing to make them they weren't willing to make an export version. It was only for their stockpiles, and therefore the Pakistan decided they would go and they would buy from Russia, which is where they have a lot of their equipment now. So that's the deal with that. That's one of the reasons Imran Khan was so upset. That's one of the things that Pakistan really wants to build relations for, is because they want export versions of these vehicles. Iraq, Kuwait, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and Australia do not have the United States version of the M1 or the A1 or A2 variants of the M1 Abrams. They do not, or the A3, which is being built right now. They don't. Only the United States has the United States version of this tank, and the United States version of this tank will very easily defeat I shouldn't say easily. It will defeat, in a one-on-one match, it will defeat another variant. Now, there are other tanks that have been purpose-built similar for this purpose. Let's see if I can find one here. I'm looking for one specific tank. Nope, that's the Type 85. Also, I have all the T-Series tanks in here in case anyone's interested. I might do a stream on, or I might do a video on it sometime. my favorite tank. The Merkava, by the way, is my favorite tank ever built. Here we go. The Zulfikar. So, this tank is called the Zulfikar. This is built by Iran. It's operated by the Iranian military. They're the only ones that did it. And the purpose of that tank is it's built specifically to look like an Abrams main battle tank. It's very difficult to distinguish at range, which is the point, which is to encourage blue on blue, and in order to encourage hesitation on the part of American forces should we ever go into direct conflict with Iran. You also see other countries building things too. You see a lot of NATO inspiration in things like the T-14 Armada. So that's kind of where this stuff is coming about. So, but yes, that's kind of the thing with tanks and why the United States has our own version of a tank and why giving it to Ukraine doesn't work, and why the Iraqis losing their tanks, which is also the first thing we targeted because it's still bad to have an Abrams tank if you're a terrorist organization, why it wasn't as big of a deal. We have to purposely build these things for Ukraine if we're going to send them there. As you continue on with the news, by the way, we jump over here. This is over by Aleppo. The Israeli Air Force actually ended up attacking Aleppo and Damascus. Israeli Air Force planes attacked Aleppo airport. The purpose of the pilots was the weapons depot on the runway. Information about the victims of the raid is currently not yet available. The Ministry of Defense and of the SAR, Syrian Arab Republic, claims that the country's air defense forces managed to shoot down several missiles fired by the aircraft. After Aleppo, the Israeli aircraft did end up attacking Damascus, and we'll take a look at some of this here. Sapinka said on Discord, by the way, regarding the little comment I said about, I got to make sure this isn't classified or whatever, and then I realized that I wouldn't have any classified information. He says, "Nice save, Paul. FBI can turn the vehicle around now and go back to HQ." Thanks. Yeah, so you can't get your hand, you can't just, go and, get... First of all, it'd be a different color. So I have stuff that's, you'll see, this is green. Colors mean things in the military. You'll see, this is green. Crazy, right? For green, for official use only, or unclassified is what green stands for. If you notice, none of my stuff is pink. There's a reason for that. So pink means secret and top secret and that kind of stuff. Nothing is pink. Everything is either white or green or some colorful version of camo or something like that. None of it is pink, and that symbolizes, in the military context, that symbolizes something that is that's something that symbolizes something that's secret or top secret. So don't worry, I don't have confidential information. The most crazy thing I have is for official use only, and the only confidential information's in my head, and I'm sure as hell not disclosing that on YouTube. I like not to go to jail. I like being a free man, believe it or not. I just would like you guys to be as well informed as I can allow you to be. What type of missile might be used for this attack in Syria? There were a lot of explosions. That's coming from JL. I do not know. The Syrian or the Israelis have pretty much everything of their own making. They have their own very flourishing arms ammunition or arms industry, military industrial complex. I don't know their munitions types, especially for aircraft. I'm not very aircraft. Decide who killed JFK, Paul. You'll never know. That's why there's pages missing. But anyway. I just don't know. I don't know enough about it to really talk intelligently. I'm going to guess and say these are probably laser-guided munitions because a lot of aircraft now have sensory pods on them. So they can actually lock onto a target, laser the target themselves, and then fire a laser guided munition at that target and successfully hit it. So I'm gonna guess and say that's likely something that could be done. Oh, I'm tracking that they have that Israel has F-16s and F-35s. They have their own munitions. Anyway, after Aleppo, the Israeli aircraft went and they struck at Damascus. Take a look. So something coming from Delta Aviation, a lot of secret equipment did fall into into the hands of the Taliban. Not really. FBI is entered the chat. Nice. Thanks, guys. Paul said, I don't have any classified information. Yeah, sure. They always say that. Yeah, well, unfortunately for you guys, I actually don't lie. All of my classified stuff's in my head. As regarding the secret equipment, so when the United States left the Kabul International Airport and they left Afghanistan, one of the things that you do is you destroy any and all things that could endanger national security. There's different levels to stuff being classified. You have, for official use only, you have compartmentalized information, you have top secret, you have secret. There's not really anything about that, like truly. But everything's on a need-to-know basis. Now, if you are evacuating a location, this is why the thermite grenade still exists. For those that don't know, I and every other infantryman is trained on how to use the thermite grenade. You don't use it on people, by the way. It's in case any Russians are here wondering. You don't use it on people. You don't use thermite on people. No, they didn't fix the stuff that was thermited. So a thermite grenade will go through quite a few things of like communications equipment. That didn't fall into the Taliban hands. You don't repair something that you have a thermite grenade sink through. It burns at 4,000 degrees Celsius. You're not fixing the hole that's made there. Secondly, most of the stuff they got was equipment from that was already getting turned over to the Afghan army anyway, which means that all of this stuff has been pre-approved. Most of the major equipment that needed to be brought out was brought out prior to even the withdrawal of forces. The drawdown of Afghanistan was actually quite a long process. I remember the beginning of the drawdown of Afghanistan. That happened actually on my first deployment. That was the first time that 2nd Battalion, 7th Marines had any troops that went to Afghanistan since their very, very terrible deployment in 2012, which left the battalion combat ineffective. That was when the drawdown of Afghanistan actually started, was in 2017. Long before any announcements were made, long before anything had happened, the drawdown was already taking place. And it was taking place to an extent even before that, especially with Army units. Camp Leatherneck, for instance, had been completely turned over to the Afghan army. A lot of this stuff was already stuff, anything that was major enough to be a danger to national security that the United States was going to go, that wasn't willing to go, yeah, that could come back to bite us later. It was taken out. Everything else that was left behind, some of it, sure, maybe it was some classified stuff at most, but it's nothing that's going to endanger national security at that point. Some stuff is just better left, and some stuff is just not worth it. And once again, that goes back over to risk mitigation, risk management, your OODA loop. It's not like we left F-16s and F-18s and F-35s lying on the airfields in Afghanistan. No, we took all of that stuff. It's not like we left comm equipment everywhere in Afghanistan. No, we took all that stuff. And then, even if they did have comm equipment, there's a crypto rollover. Guaranteed there's a crypto rollover when that happened. So that means that any encryption on those radios would have been useless. So even if they were working radios that were left, would have been useful for the Taliban to begin with, because they wouldn't be able to listen to American frequencies because they don't have the encryptions. So that's my answer to that. You see some of the explosions here over Damascus. And that is the situation ongoing there. Oh, I almost skipped it. It's the Russians. Ah, God. So this is the Russian Operational Command South for them. This morning, Russian aerospace forces launched airstrikes at Marat Mazrin area north of Idlib. There's no information regarding victims at this point. You can see some of these airstrikes. The Russians are very active in Syria, by the way. Very, very active. Annoyingly so.
محمية أرنستو حد الضارب.
Now, Syria is not their most kinetic engagement. Obviously, Ukraine is definitely that most kinetic engagement, but the Russians have been very active inside of Syria for quite some time. The bombing of Aleppo in 2016 really illustrates the Russian willingness. With a lot of incidents inside of Ukraine, the bombing and the fighting ongoing by the Russian military in Syria and the barbaric brutality of it really set the tone for what the Russian military was willing to do. The Russian military facilitated the use of biological weaponry, chlorine gas, used by the Syrian National Army against against rebels in Aleppo. They did that. The Russians facilitated that. The Russians used those, they used thermobaric munitions inside of Syria. They leveled Aleppo. Delta Aviation says, why did Ukraine supply some military equipment to Iran? What? I've never heard of that. But anyway, the Russians bombed Aleppo into oblivion. They used cluster munitions in Aleppo. You saw this in Kharkiv earlier on. They would shell Aleppo with like BM-21 grads, and they would bomb a location, in Aleppo, and then they would wait for the white hats, which are the rescue workers in Syria, and they'd wait for them to come out. They'd give a pause. They wait for the rescue workers to come out, and then they would shell the area again while the rescuers were out in the open, thinking it was safe, and they would kill them. Just to make sure that they couldn't save people. It was terrible. What the Russians did in Syria, it was absolutely terrible. When we go over here, we end up in Afghanistan. Afghan women are calling on feminists to stop Afghan women from becoming victims of the regime. A number of female protesters from Afghanistan's Women's Unity and the Solidarity Group say that if the UN and the Security Council of this organization remain silent on women in Afghanistan, thousands of girls in the country will suffer from the fate of victims of dozens of missing girl protesters.
مسئولین سازمان حقوق بشر الهه و صدها دختر معترضی این کشور که در خفا و هراس به سر میبرد یا شکنجه شده به شکل مرموز به قتل رسانده می شود یا مورد تجاوز قرار می گیرد. آیا برای دختران خودتان و بانوان کشورهایتان همچون ظلم و ستم را اجازه می دهید؟ دختران و زنان شجاع افغانستان.
She's just talking about, needing to fight this at this point. IED killed 2 Taliban militants today in Kabul. The IED explosion took place in the city of Kabul, killing 2 and wounding 3 more Taliban militants. Today, Pashtun nationalists are celebrating the day of liberation of Afghanistan from American occupation. The date of the holiday is not chosen by chance. Exactly 1 year ago today, the last plane with the U.S. military left the capital's airport.
Un costar como tá todo.
And the Islamic State did say that they attacked the Taliban convoy celebrating the anniversary of the departure of the U.S. forces with a car bomb parked in the path, in their path. As a result, 3 pieces of Taliban equipment were destroyed, and with them, and those in them were killed and injured. And that's the Islamic State officially claiming that attack. We jump up here to Kazakhstan, where a thermal power plant is on fire right now. Eyewitness reports a fire at the thermal power plant there in Shakhtinsk, Kazakhstan. There are currently wide-scale power outages throughout the city. So you can see some of that fire ongoing there. And as we continue, we jump down here to Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka right now, police are cracking down on protesters that are currently protesting against the president. Police are cracking down on these protesters as economic hardships and for the release of imprisoned protesters, as crackdowns have intensified dramatically since the new president took office. Authorities are using draconian anti-terrorism law to imprison protesters really without any kind of process. Take a look. So that is the ongoing situation there in Sri Lanka. We jump down here into Africa, where the Islamic State has conducted several attacks in the Cabo Delgado province. The Islamic State attacked Christian villages in the Mozambican province of Cabo Delgado. At this point, there is no information regarding any dead or wounded. And as you can see, those are the Islamic State militants now. The Islamic State has quite an intense presence within the country of Mozambique. In fact, it's one of their strongest presences inside of the entirety of Africa. And we will wrap up the serious news here as we jump over into Haiti. Anti-government protests are occurring inside of Haiti. The inflation in the country has reached a 10-year high. In addition, there's been quite a significant increase in crime as well, as the entire capital of Port-au-Prince is actually completely surrounded by large gangs. Many are outraged by the growing shortage of gasoline, as well as other difficulty obtaining dollars from the central bank.
Deuxième journée mobilisation ça qui a commencé depuis des semaines se passer là.
And so those are the anti-government protests there in Haiti. That actually wraps up all the serious news of the night, and now we are going to wrap up on the last two bits of news for the night for you guys. And we try and end the night on kind of an uplifting note, at least, or at least something that's interesting, something kind of going on in the world, whether that's archaeology or what have you. And what we're taking a look at here is that up in Norway, to begin with, we actually go up here, and a three-bladed Viking arrowhead was revealed by a melting ice patch. A melting ice patch in the mountains of Norway has revealed an archaeological surprise, a rare three-bladed arrowhead used by Vikings more than a millennium ago. Researchers unearthed the metal weapon while surveying a new site in the Jotunheimen Mountains, Jotunheimen Mountains, a millennium-old Viking hotspot for reindeer hunting located high above the tree line and punctuated by ice and snow. The 4-inch long, or 10-centimeter, iron arrowhead came as a surprise and marked the first time the team had found such weaponry buried in this region of the country. Three-bladed arrowheads are known from the Viking Age in Norway, but they're very rare compared to the normal two-bladed ones. While it's too soon for researchers to attach a definitive date to the rust-speckled arrowhead, it's believed that it's likely to be Viking age, so about 1,000 to about 1,200 years old. 4 similar arrowheads were found at a burial mound in Sparbu, a village of Trondelag, located about 200 miles north of the mountain range, as well as I am going to try and pronounce that. Liège-Jean-Colin in Opdal. And this is the three-bladed arrowhead that was found. Pretty cool. Once again, I am very sorry for butchering the pronunciations here. I'm not very good at pronouncing things. But this is the three-bladed arrowhead. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. He doesn't like Vikings. Well, probably the Anglo-Saxons don't like Vikings. But who else doesn't like... Well, the Normans probably also don't like the Vikings. But aside from that, pretty much everyone else can think that Vikings are cool. Anyway, but if you want more information, you can go down here and check out the Life Science has an entire article regarding this. If you guys want to check out a little bit more information regarding it. And we come back down here, and this is in Zimbabwe, in the northern part of Zimbabwe, where over here... the oldest African dinosaur ever found was unearthed here in Zimbabwe. The oldest definitive dinosaur species ever discovered in Africa, one of the oldest dinosaur species to walk the earth, has been unearthed in Zimbabwe. Scientists began working on the Pebbly Arcos Formation in northern Zimbabwe in 2017. After 5 years of careful excavation and COVID delays, they finally unveiled a dig star specimen. Mibrosaurus rothi, or the M. rothi, lived during the late Triassic period, which is 252 million to 201 million years ago. At roughly 230 million years old, the specimen is on par with the oldest dinosaurs ever found. The newly named dinosaur, the sauropodomorph, is a relative of the long-necked sauropods like Brachiosaurus and Apatosaurus. At around 6 feet or 2 meters long and 1.5 feet or 0.5 feet or 5 meters tall at the hip, Mrothi wasn't tiny, but it would have been dwarfed by later sauropods, such as the massive 122 foot long or 37 meter long Patagotitan. I mean, take a look at this. So that's about what they're thinking this thing looks like. Now, an interesting thing is, if you guys want more information, you can check out the article on nature.com or over at Life Science, by the way. An interesting thing, I didn't know that these things existed, but the Pebbly Arcos Formation is an area that's in this general vicinity. This is kind of to the northeast of the Doma Safari area. And out here, there are several natural rock formations, geographic formations, that are geological formations that they are protruding from the ground that are from the Triassic period. So this is literally Triassic Earth, Triassic period Earth sticking above the ground, where normally it's buried under layers and layers and layers and layers and layers of other stuff to try and even get to. So these are very exposed and they're highly studied. They're very, very rare. They're found on very few locations. Zimbabwe is one of them. I think there's only 3 countries that I think any of these actually pop up into that's actually known for, which is something I didn't know at all. I didn't even know that those existed, and I really like dinosaurs, so that's the thing. I have a fascination with dinosaurs growing up, and that just has never gone away. Thank you, Jurassic Park. Anyway, with that, let's see. And it looks like that is the end of the questioning here inside of the chat as well. So thank you guys very much for everything you guys have been doing. Thank you very much for joining us here today. I hope that you've, if you didn't enjoy, at least found this thing knowledgeable. It's very hard to enjoy something kind of depressing every day. I understand that. But I hope that you found that this is it. Riley has asked me, is the night dark? The night is very dark. Very, very dark. But with that, I hope that you guys did learn something, and I hope that you guys are taking mental health rather seriously as you're kind of listening to this. A lot of you guys have been here every single day, which I really enjoy the support. Thank you very much for coming out every night, but please make sure to take care of your mental health too. And please be sure to check out the video description below. We do all of this for charity, so we're never doing super chats. We're never doing any kind of merchandising. 100% of everything we do is for charity. And so we're not trying to profit off of other people's misery. We don't believe in that here on this channel. So please check out the charities listed below in the description. If you can't give a lot to these organizations, give a little. If you can't give anything at all, that's fine. Help us grow. The more people that come here, enjoy the news with us, the more people can pitch in. And hopefully we'll be able to put eventually a fundraiser on every single stream we do. That is the current goal right now, is to get to the point that we can do fundraisers on the streams and raise money to help people throughout the world. So you can do that by, whether you're talking about, whether you are talking about it with your friends or family, sharing it on your Discord communities, sharing it on Twitter. You can follow us on social media and share us on social media too. We have a Telegram, we have a Facebook, we have a Twitter, we have Discord, we have any of that. And also, if you have an organization that we don't have listed, please jump on our Discord, get in touch with a staff member, send us the link for it, send us the information for that. We would love to get it added to the we'd love to get it added to the stream, to our website, to everywhere else that we have all those donation links listed. So please send us more. We're constantly looking for more. We want to vet them. So, but other than that, please be safe. I hope that you, your family, and your friends are safe. And if not, I do hope that you find that safety and security in the very near future. With that, we hope to see you once again tomorrow night at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, 9 p.m. Central. And hopefully you'll be back for another day of the noon news and another 24 hours in review. Remember to be sure to like and subscribe and all of that wonderful jazz and help us grow our lovely community here. We hope to be able to talk to you on the Discord as well, or on Twitter, or anywhere else that you may be following us. And with that, my name is Paul from the New News. Have a fantastic night and a wonderful Thursday, everybody.
Going home, Russian soldiers, going home. Бо ми всіх вас тут змішаємо з багном. І стоять до повноваги, і чудно кличе, діти нахуй. Тут працює ЗСУ і ТМО. Нам не треба ні конфлікту, ні війни. Та ми готові всіх вас звать до сатани. Тисячі вже полягло, і все більше шверхуємо. То для них нема нічого, крім труни. Russian soldiers going home. Бо ми всіх вас тут змішаємо з багном. І стоять до повноваги, і чудно кличе, діти нахуй. Тут працює ЗСУ і ТМО. Вызволять пришел, братишка, ну привет. На моей земле тебе один ответ. Нашим людям плечом, даже танки и бачок. Вам не взять нас и за 100 тысяч лет. Russian soldiers going home. Бо ми всіх вас тут змішаємо з багном. І стоять до повноваги, і чудно кличе, діти нахуй. will come back. We'll come to help you fit it in the sky. Gone home, Russian soldiers, gone home. Бо ми всіх вас тут змішаємо з багном. І стоять довольно ваги, і чудно кличе, діти нахуй. Тут працює ЗСУ і ТРО. Gone home, Russian soldiers, gone home. Бо ми всіх вас тут змішаємо з багном. І стрія до волноваги, чутно кличе, діти нахуй. Тут працює ЗСУ і ТРО. Gone home, Russian soldiers, gone home. Бо ми всіх вас тут змішаємо з багном. І стрія до волноваги, чутно кличе, діти нахуй. Тут працює ЗСУ і ТРО. Gone home, Russian soldiers, gone home. Бо ми всіх вас тут змішаємо з багном. І стрія до волноваги, чутно кличе, діти нахуй. Тут працює ЗСУ і ТРО. Ідіть нахуй.